Now, there's this myth going around about franchising, and some people just say when you buy into a franchise, you're just buying a job. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, first off, if you were buying a job, the nice thing is you get a lot of tax benefits because, as your listeners know, you get the tax code is written to favor real estate investors and business owners, right? So, end of the day, about half of our clients are looking to leave the corporate world and step into ownership and run the day-to-day operations, what we call an owner-operator model.
And what are those skills that you would need?
I'll boil it down to 2 points. One, you've got to be good with people, and that's business 101, right? You've got to be someone that people want to work for, somebody that people want to work with. Number two is you've got to be willing to follow a playbook. And, in franchising, where people can get in trouble is when they try to do things their own way.
Let's talk about your book. The title, I believe, is called Non-Food Franchising.
Yeah.
Why non-food?
Non-food franchising. And happy to share a copy with any of your listeners. What I found is when I say the F word, franchise, people think fast food. And, yet there's a world of opportunities out there outside of fast food. And probably 95% of my clients are interested in things outside of fast food. Non-food is where we specialize. Our humble belief is there are easier ways to make money. We need the food guys. We certainly support them. But end of the day, there are a lot of businesses you can get involved in that require less capital investment on the front end, fewer operating hours, fewer hourly employees. They may not be product based where you have waste and thus lower margins and less susceptible to consumer whims.
If somebody is really seriously interested in getting into franchising, what is the biggest step they can take? What's the first step they need to take?
Yeah, get off the couch and start looking around. It's really important to see what's going on behind the scenes. And that's where we come in to help clients. We have those relationships. We work with 600 franchisors that are looking to grow and expand into new markets. Non-sexy is the new sexy, I like to say, when it comes to business ownership.
This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. My guest today is franchise expert John Ostenson. John has been in franchising for decades and has written a successful book on franchising. John, welcome to the show.
Dave, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
John, let's start about your journey in franchising. You have a fantastic history with Shelf Genie and some other ventures. Tell us how you got into franchising and what's been the journey like.
Yeah, Gabe, like so many of your listeners, I spent many years in the corporate world working for the man and had a good run. Wanted to be a business owner, wanted to do my own thing, didn't know what it looked like, and really stumbled into franchising and had the opportunity to come in at Shelf Genie, as you mentioned, it's a national franchise system, and serve as their president, supporting our franchisees all across the country on a day-to-day basis. Really, that was the light bulb moment for me where I fell in love with the franchise model. I just saw how so many different backgrounds could get plugged into franchise ownership and business ownership, through this vehicle. So long story short, after Shelf Genie partnered with the founder, we spun off, we've invested in franchises ourselves. And, so I'm a multi-brand franchisee now, in addition to having been a franchisor. For the past 5 years, I've been able to spend most of my time helping others all around the country get plugged in. And so I introduce them to opportunities, what I see as the top ones in their market, and really educate them. Like you said, had a book come out recently called Non-Food Franchising, which is kind of my specialty and focus area, everything outside of food. And it's been a great run. Helped a lot of people.
What would you say is the biggest change between, as you mentioned, working for the corporate world, working for someone else, having a job 9 to 5 versus actually running your own franchise?
Hey, end of the day, everything that's worth doing is going to take work, and you're going to have challenges. But what I found is the challenges that I had in the corporate world, I would trade away all day for the ones that I encounter now, because I'm building my own empire. End of the day, there's no cap. I'm making the decisions. I've got the flexibility, and it's hard work, but I could never go back. I love the run I had in the corporate world, and it was a really good run. Got exposed to a lot of different things and very grateful for it. But there's nothing like running your own business. Once you get a taste of it, you can't turn back.
Now, there's this myth going around about franchising, and some people just say when you buy into a franchise, you're just buying a job. Maybe dispel that for us a little bit. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, first off, if you were buying a job, the nice thing is you get a lot of tax benefits because, as your listeners know, you get the tax code is written to favor real estate investors and business owners, right? So, you do. It's not apples to apples, but no. End of the day, about half of our clients are looking to leave the corporate world and step into ownership and run the day-to-day operations, what we call an owner-operator model. Most of them have the intention to replace themselves eventually. They just want to get in, get their hands dirty, early on. And then they typically move on to their next venture, which could be another franchise. A lot of our clients will build up these portfolios of franchises. But the other half of our clients on day one step into what we call an executive model or semi-passive, where they put a manager in place to run the business. Now, you and I both know it comes down to having a good manager in place, right? You can have a great franchise system. You still have to have someone that you trust, who you have aligned interest with running that business. So two different paths, but I'd say there are a lot of options for those that are not looking to buy a job, but they're looking to get that business ownership exposure. There are different ways to make it happen.
So what does that transition look like from being a full-time employee somewhere to, say, starting, getting into a franchise and then slowly making that transition or quickly making that transition from being an employee, a W-2 employee, to just running your own franchise? What does that transition look like? Typically, how long does it take? And what are the steps that you really have to think about? What's the transformation you have to undergo as a human to do it?
Yeah, I'll start by saying not everyone should be a business owner. There are people out there that need to be employees. But what I found is in most people, there's that entrepreneurial desire and they just don't know where to start. And so that's where we come in to help them connect the dots and, again, identify the right opportunities, understand how their backgrounds could help them step in. And oftentimes they're jumping into a whole new industry. So they've got to have a learning mindset coming in. But they can transfer those skill sets. So maybe they were a salesperson, maybe they were more operations, and eventually whoever they hire on their team can complement their skills. So I think it's important to do a little bit of introspection, to your point, and understand what is it I bring to the table? What will I need to complement my skills? What are some of those industries that could be of interest? I see doctors getting into, insulation businesses. I see attorneys stepping into, health and wellness concepts. People with no backgrounds in a lot of corporate W-2s that say, hey, don't know what we're looking for, but they'll end up in youth soccer or in pet grooming or in senior care because they say, I see the need in the market. And if I've got a good franchisor on the sideline that's teaching me the industry and supporting me on a day-to-day basis, it allows me to, really thrive and kind of, you don't work for the franchisor, but in a way, you've got a coach on the sidelines that is guiding you along the way. So you're not in business all by yourself.
And then what are those skills that you would need? Like if somebody's considering franchising, what kind of skills and what skill set do they need to be successful?
I'll boil it down to 2 points. One, you've got to be good with people, and that's business 101, right? You've got to be someone that people want to work for, somebody that people want to work with, whether it be franchisor or your clients. You've got to be, decent with people. Pretty basic. Number two is you've got to be willing to follow a playbook. And, in franchising, where people can get in trouble is when they try to do things their own way and they go off. And now a good franchisor is going to let you innovate and try new things. But by and large, you want to stay within the lines because that's been proven. There's a reason why you're getting into that system, to follow the direction, and it helps you ramp up faster and ultimately be more successful. I've seen it time and time again.
How many hours a week would you say somebody needs to commit? Like if someone's planning, can I do it part-time? Can I do it on the weekends as I start passively alongside my full-time job? What does that look like?
I'd say it always takes 5 hours more than you think it will. So you do want to go in eyes wide open and understand, there's seasons of the business. Early on, you're going to be leaning in a little bit more than you will be later on. So much of it, again, comes down to having a good operator in place. If you don't have a good operator running the business, you're going to be leaning in, putting more time in the business than you thought. So I'd say if you're in that, obviously, if you're owner operator, you're putting in 40 hours a week, maybe 50, 60 early on, right? As you ramp up that business. If you're more semi-passive, and that's the term that's used, a semi-absentee, semi-passive executive model, a better term, in my opinion, would be semi-involved, because you're still going to be involved. If you're funding this business, you've got skin in the game, you're going to want to make sure it's successful. You'll probably end up leaning in a little bit more than you think going in. But, a lot of franchises would say, hey, if you have a good manager in place, you could run this business putting in 10 to 15 hours a week. Some would say 5 to 10 hours a week. My own personal experience is you put in more time early on again. But like for me, I own several franchises now and I'm very passive. I'm not putting in more than a couple hours a week. It can be done. There's just seasons where you have to lean in a little bit more.
Can you tell us more about the franchises you own and why did you select those franchises?
Yeah, I've owned a number over the years, some of which I've sold, oftentimes sold to other franchisees as well. That internal M&A within a franchise system is very common. But I've got a driveway business currently in Atlanta. I've got where I am. I've got a business that does custom orthotics. We use 3D printing to create insoles for shoes and such down in Delray, Florida, and that's one that I'm very passive on. The franchisor is kind of running the business for me, which is a unique model. Only a couple of franchisors do that. And then I've got one up in Minneapolis where we own the whole Minneapolis, St. Paul area for line striping and concrete paving. In asphalt paving, we do more asphalt and concrete up there, but like for parking lots. So it's a B2B, oftentimes recurring revenue service. We've got national accounts. It's those niches that you don't think about off the bat, right? But there's a need in the market for stuff like that.
Yeah, I would have never thought about a company or a franchise that paints parking lots, but there you go. And
Yeah.
so I'm surprised. So it sounds like you're nationally, like geographically dispersed. I mean, why not just stick to one area? What's the advantage of being in multiple states?
I don't know if it's an advantage necessarily. I had good people in those locations, and so it made sense to start businesses there. In Atlanta, I've had a home cleaning business, carpet cleaning business, and pool cleaning business, all in the franchise realm. And those were all in our backyard in Atlanta. So those were my first ones. So I do encourage people, it makes it a little bit easier if it's in your backyard, especially if it's your first go at it. But down the line, if you've got a brother-in-law that lives in Boston and he's ready to make a change and wants to run a business, it may make more sense to let him run the business there and you invest in it, versus your backyard.
And what does the typical investment look like? Like if somebody says, hey, you know what, that sounds like a lot of fun. I like construction. I have some construction experience. Maybe I want to get in on one of these parking lot paving franchises. What kind of a startup capital do you need? Is there financing? Do you need certain credit requirements? What does it take to actually be accepted into one of these and get it started?
Yeah, certainly some of the opportunities our clients are getting into are seven figures. I think of clients of ours yesterday that were signing it for trampoline parks. That's a big investment. But a lot of them that are more service-based, kind of like the ones that I mentioned there, the asphalt paving and line striping and other home and property services businesses. Oftentimes, your all-in investment could be 150,000 to 300,000. I'd say that's a common range, and sometimes that could even be for 2 or 3 territories, which are defined by population, maybe 200,000 population, let's say. But what that would include, so let's say you're all in at 300,000. That's your startup cost, your franchise fee, which is around 50,000 usually for that first territory, and it also includes several months of working capital all built in. So essentially, you're all in investment range. We do have some clients paying cash. Most of them, though, will use an SBA loan. That's very common. Obviously, lenders prefer franchises over startups when lending, right? So oftentimes that would be putting in maybe 25% cash, 75% SBA loan. It's very common. Some people will use an old retirement plan, a 401k or IRA, and roll that over through what's called the ROBS program, where you can set up the business as a C corporation, buy the business with the retirement plan, and then you pay yourself a salary from it. Certainly some people will use HELOCs as well. So a lot of different ways to get involved on the funding side.
And what does that loan look like when I think you mentioned the acronym SBA. What kind of a loan is that?
Small Business Administration. So a lot of banks will administer these. It's the most common loan that's used for small business financing. And there's what's called an express loan that's usually a smaller loan, a couple 100,000, or the 7A loan, which is usually a little bit larger, like you're doing a retail customer facing business, let's say. There's some nuances between both of them, but largely you could pay these off over time. Pay them off early if you wanted to once you're cash flowing. Obviously rates are higher than they used to be, so they're starting to come down. We have seen them come down. But you're still probably in that 10% range. Nice thing is they are tax deductible, of course, because you're using it for a business. So that's and we've got some great partners that help our clients with these SBA loans.
And how long does it take to get to revenue from the time you start the paperwork and you get the loan and you make the investment? How long does it take to get to revenue and actually start earning money?
You can get to revenue pretty fast. I was on the phone with a client of mine today. He did 250,000 in his first 3 months in business, but he's still not in the black just yet. He's almost there, and so it does take a little while to get enough revenue to cover those fixed expenses, and you get that oxygen of profitability, as I like to call it. Um, for some businesses, it could be 2 or 3 months. Sometimes it may take up to a year. I always encourage our clients to go in conservatively. The nice thing with franchising is you get to talk to other franchise owners within that system before you ever sign. So you do get to go in between that and the franchisor's FDD, the franchise disclosure document. You get a lot of historical information to kind of build out your pro forma. So you go in with an expectation of when you'll be cash flowing and what that looks like. And I always tell our clients, let's go conservative and then beat the expectations.
And are the companies who are looking for franchisees, are they pretty selective? I mean, is there a selection process? Do you have to meet criteria?
Yeah, typically on the quantifiable side, so on the financial side, I'd say, if someone doesn't have a net worth of at least 150,000, it's probably not the best time to buy a business. Like let's target saving up to that. Yeah, but most people are north of that level, and some franchises will have a minimum net worth of 200,000, 250. That's very common in the service businesses, like I talked about. Certainly, if you want to do trampoline parks or do larger capex businesses, you're maybe 500,000 net worth or $1 million net worth in those cases. Yeah, but then they are selective. They want to make sure that the owners they bring into their system, again, are going to be a good fit for the culture, a good fit for working with their other franchisees, with their home office team. So it is kind of a mutual interview process. Not only are they trying to interest you in the franchise as you're exploring it, but they also want to get a feel for who you are and if you'll be a good fit.
Earlier, you mentioned the idea of getting a territory. What does that look like? Does that basically mean that there's a certain geographical area where the same company will not allow other franchises to come in and compete with you? And how big are these territories?
Yeah, so it would be a protected territory, like you said, where other franchisees couldn't come compete there. Depending on the business, if it's a brick and mortar business, then it may be defined as like a 3-mile radius or 6-mile radius around your location. If it's more of a service-based business, oftentimes it's defined by average household incomes, number of houses with an average income of X, or number of addressable businesses, or oftentimes population. So maybe 250,000 in population defines the territory. The franchisor has all the demographic information at the zip code level, and they would work with you on defining that territory. You can always operate outside the territory as well, as long as there's not another franchisee that owns it. Yes, that's kind of a little trick as well.
Let's talk about your book. The title, I believe, is called Non-Food Franchising.
Yeah.
Why non-food?
Non-food franchising. And happy to share a copy with any of your listeners if they come out to our website. What I found is when I say the F word, franchise, people think fast food. And, yet there's a world of opportunities out there outside of fast food. And probably 95% of my clients are interested in things outside of fast food. So, that was the thinking, a little bit of a contrarian title there, but no, non-food is where we specialize. Our humble belief is there are easier ways to make money. We need the food guys. We certainly support them. But end of the day, there are a lot of businesses you can get involved in that require less capital investment on the front end, fewer operating hours, fewer hourly employees. They may not be product based where you have waste and thus lower margins, and less susceptible to consumer whims. So again, love the food guys, but for our clients and for our own personal investments, we believe there are easier ways to make money.
I love authors because the publishing stories are always quite interesting. How long did it take to write the book, publish the book, and how's the book doing so far?
Yeah, the book's been great. It came out just under 2 years ago. We've sold thousands of copies online, but it really wasn't intended to be a moneymaker. I give out free copies constantly. It's really to educate, and all the proceeds from the book go to Hope International. It's a great nonprofit that we support. So it wasn't intended to be a moneymaker, but it was intended to help educate and help a great organization. So I know it's done everything that we hoped it would do. And it's been a great success. It took about a year to write the book, and it wasn't hard to come up with content. I had the content in my head. It's just all the pieces that go into pulling it together that took time.
And on the educating part, what are some of the biggest myths or misunderstandings about franchising?
Yeah, I think, like any industry, franchising has good players, and they've got ones that you don't want to be associated with. And I think sometimes The ones that you don't want to be associated with sometimes get some of the headlines, whether it be Subway's forcing all their franchisees to do this. And I'd say you see more headlines in the food space. Again, that's where some of these bigger brands have kind of come in and done some things that upset franchisees. But I'd say the other is that people probably think that while you're following a playbook, they think that staying within the lines is the lines may be just an inch apart, but really a good franchisor is going to give you some good bandwidth to try new things and innovate. That's usually where the best ideas come from. And I think there's so many positives to franchising because you've got a proven business, that has been shown in other markets. Not only do you have a franchisor supporting you, but you've got other franchisees that you're learning from and exchanging best practices. They're living the same thing day in, day out. So really, you've got this community around you, which is powerful. Certainly, you have bulk buying abilities, whether it be for services or goods. And oftentimes, when you look to sell the business down the line, franchises trade at a higher multiple than non-franchises in like-kind industries is what the research has shown. So a lot of times people write off fast franchising because they think it's fast food, and then they realize, hey, wait a minute, I never thought about this industry or that industry being involved.
And most people, when they think about franchising, they think about starting their own from scratch. But you just mentioned that there's a healthy market for buying and selling existing ones. What are the pros and cons of starting versus buying?
Yeah, I literally just had a call the client in Minnesota a few minutes ago that he's been looking for 2.5 years, for a business, an existing business. And he's like, I've been under LOI with several of them. I've gone down the due diligence path with quite a few of them. Here's this story. Here's this story. I told him, we have so many people that reach out to us after several years looking for the perfect business that finally say, maybe it makes sense to franchise instead, and come into a new market with an existing brand. Thing that people oftentimes overlook with an existing business is, and we do some resales. It's just there's not a lot of great resales out there because people hold on to businesses, right? But we do participate in those. It's probably 5 or 10% of what we do. But oftentimes, when you're looking at a resale business, you think that everything once you make that purchase is going to stay the same, right? And you'll be able to grow the business. But whenever you have a change in ownership, you have the risk of losing some key employees or the risk of losing some key customers, and so there's a lot of inherent risk that isn't captured in that snapshot on the paper. And so people come around to the idea of, hey, if I start my own franchise, that way from the beginning, I'm putting my thumbprints on the business. I'm selecting the people that I want to have in the business. I'm building it with my culture. And so it is interesting when you see that light bulb come on for people.
I think on your website, I saw that there are some franchise opportunities that are really good for real estate investors. We have a lot of real estate investors who have been on the show. I'm a real estate investor myself. What are some franchise opportunities that would really complement, say, owning several rental properties?
Yeah, no, and I'm a real estate investor too, both directly as well as through syndications. Probably 2/3 of our clients invest in real estate. I think there's a lot of synergies from, again, a tax advantage mindset, from an alternative investment preference. And what I found is, for the real estate investors, oftentimes they like businesses that they're already paying someone else to do. So it could be property services. It could be everything from, I mentioned the driveways, my business. It could be, window coverings, flooring, paint, gutters, roofing. So those direct services, it could be property management. We had a real estate broker recently that has a large team that said, hey, I'm going to start a property management business because I'm tired of referring clients over, all of our investor clients. He said, should I go the franchise route? And ultimately, we introduced him to one, and he did, and he's done very well with it. But that's a direct compliment. We have some real estate investors that say, hey, we're totally open-minded industry-wise. We'd love to kind of diversify our holdings, and get a business that has that active tax benefit, not just the passive tax benefit.
If somebody is really seriously interested in getting into franchising, what is the biggest step they can take? What's the first step they need to take?
Yeah, get off the couch and start looking around. The challenge, Gabe, is if they start Googling, they're going to see every company putting forth their best marketing foot, right? And there's always a lot of noise out there. It's really important to see what's going on behind the scenes, and that's where we come in to help clients. We have those relationships. We work with 600 franchisors that are looking to grow and expand into new markets, and just having those relationships and understanding what to look for. We're looking at the leadership teams, the competitive advantages. Obviously, the financial model's got to be there. But what are current owners and their system saying about their experiences? So we're using all those filters to kind of narrow down this curated assortment so that people are looking at the right opportunities rather than just looking at all the noise. Even if you look at a top 100 franchise list online, most of those companies are paying to be on the list. It's a PR move for them. So again, a lot of noise, and it's hard to kind of weed through it.
So it sounds like you're really plugged into the industry. You're plugged into, so you know exactly what kind of franchise opportunities exist. You know what kind of franchises people are looking for. What are some of the industries that really excite you? Where do you think the action is going to be in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, so many different niches. I had a call with a client yesterday up in New York who bought into a business that does temporary walls, containment walls around a construction site or renovation site. You never, again, it's those niches you don't think about. He's killing it. He had bought 5 territories. He's coming back. He wants to buy 10 more territories now. And he's only 3 months into the business. He's like, it's just taken off. Not everyone takes off that fast. I don't want to paint that picture, but it's businesses that, things like restoration, water mitigation, mold remediation, the non-sexy is the new sexy, I like to say, when it comes to business ownership. So much interest in pets. Everyone bought a pet during COVID. Well, eventually that pet's not going to, you're going to spend on grooming, on boarding, all of that, which there are franchises to support that. But what about pet crematoriums? I don't want to be morbid, but ultimately something's got to be done at the end of the day. And so sometimes there are niches like that. Things like youth soccer. Soccer's never been bigger. The World Cup's coming to the U.S. in 2 years. We've had clients do very well in the youth soccer space. Senior care, you look at what's going on with the, there's just, everyone's aging, right? And they want to stay in their homes. Well, not only do they need a caretaker, which there's a lot of franchises around that space, but they're going to need mobility solutions, wheelchair ramps, stair lifts, bathroom retrofits. So you think about what are those needs in the market where you can have a positive impact, but also a really good cash flowing business that isn't going to be trendy, isn't going out of style.
I love it. John, let's end it there. Where can people reach out to you to learn more, to learn about franchising, and to learn more about your book?
Yeah, come out to our website, franbridgeconsulting.com, FRAN bridgeconsulting.com. And share your email address. We'll send you links where you can get free downloads of our book. And, indicate in your response if you'd like to set up a call. And I'd be happy to get on a call and understand your situation a little bit better. And then come back to you with what I see as top opportunities in your market. So again, entirely free to work with us. And, we've been able to place hundreds of successful owners in franchises the last couple of years. Would love to be able to help any of your listeners.
Put all those links into the show notes. John Ostenson, thank you very much for your time today.
Enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Kate.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Money Seed Podcast. Please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps spread the message to other investors and it helps attract new viewers to the show. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much.